Violence, terrorist attacks have left millions of people displaced all over the world. In Nigeria, the thousands of people have been displaced in recent times, especially in the northeastern part of the country, due to Boko Haram attacks. The displaced are now being camped in different locations where government has established for the internally displaced persons. Today is International World Refugee Day. It is a day set aside to raise awareness on the plight of the displaced persons and their challenges. This is our focus on Panorama, coming to you from Lagos Network Center. But first, the news making the headlines. I am Ademola Adeoye. We shall be back shortly. Stay tuned. With an allocation of 35% of the 7.441 trillion naira appropriation to capital expenditure, the 2017 budget is targeted at halting the current economic slowdown and stimulating growth. Minister of Budget and National Planning Udoma Udoma, at the public presentation of the Appropriation Act, urged the public to monitor and evaluate the execution of the budget in this fiscal year. Lee Katum Babatunde takes us through the federal government's plan to generate and spend revenue in the fiscal year.
2016 was a very, very challenged year, very challenged. And we only managed to realize 76% of our revenue targets. And this was actually principally because of the foreign exchange shortages that we had.
As a result, government took a cue from its decision on the 2017 budget by taking into account the widening gap of inequality, insurgency and insecurity, higher unemployment rate, external shocks, as well as foreign exchange effect on the local currency and the economy. The budget projects revenue to rise to 5.08 trillion naira, all revenue 41.7% compared to 19% for the year 2016, and projected revenue expected from recoveries at 11%. Of the 7.441 trillion naira spending estimates for the year, 2.99 trillion naira is allocated for non-debt spending, 2.36 trillion naira capital expenditure, 1.66 trillion naira debt servicing, and 177.46 billion naira goes to provision to retire maturing bonds to local contractors.
I think we've significantly geared up our execution capabilities, and as we find the money, we will perform the budget.
Non-debt recurrent expenditure for the year will see personnel costs of MVA's account for 63% of expenditure, and the least is 1.3%, which serves as refund to special accounts. Informed by the need to open up economic space for viability through the provision of critical infrastructure, works, Power and Housing Ministry tops MVA allocations with 553.71 billion naira. Of interest, however, is the allocation of 350 billion naira to bridge the inequality gap under the Special Intervention Program of government.
So it's a significant improvement. All we can do is do two things. One is to ensure that those monies are actually spent on the projects and programs they were approved for, on the one hand. Then secondly, to ensure that we continue to build on this towards the future.
The National Assembly takes the largest chunk of statutory transfer put at 125 billion naira. It is expected that the deficit of 2.356 trillion naira, representing 2.18% of GDP, will be borrowed, 1.25 trillion naira from domestic sources and 1.07 trillion naira from external sources, while 35 billion naira is expected to be sourced through sales of government property and privatization proceeds. In Abuja, I'm Lekatun Babatunde.
The police says some of the suspected kidnappers of students of the Nigerian Turkish College, Lagos, will be arraigned today, Tuesday, 20th of June. First Public Relations Officer, Chief Superintendent of Police, Jimoh Moshood, stated this in Abuja while briefing journalists on the achievements of the police in the past few weeks. Edino Justice reports.
In January this year, government stormed the Nigerian Turkish College, Lagos, bored hole in the fence and kidnapped 3 pupils along with 5 others, demanding for millions of naira as ransom. But in a swift response, police arrested 2 of the masterminds. The first spokesperson said this: the arrest of kidnapped kingpin and events, the rescue of a priest in Imo State were some of the major recent achievements.
3 principal suspects that were responsible were equally apprehended. The priest had been reunited with his family. The vehicle that he was traveling in before he was kidnapped was equally recovered. We are making progress in ensuring that every kidnap case is resolved.
He added that the relaunch last week of Operation Maximum Security along Abuja-Kaduna Expressway had started yielding results, as IGP Intelligence Response Unit has arrested 8 suspects, including buyers of stolen items.
On interrogation, I've confessed to so many kidnapping along these highways. Some other victims have equally been rescued from this gang, and virtually all these victims have identified all the suspects we are parading before you today.
While appealing to the public to continue to supply police information on crimes, assured Nigerians that the police is determined to bring crime rates to a 0 level. Aiding of Justice, NTA.
Borno State Police Command has confirmed that 12 civilians and 5 female suicide bombers died in a multiple suicide bomb attack on Sunday night at Kofa Village, Dalori, on the outskirts of Maiduguri, the Borno State capital. Maimuna Garba reports.
The multiple suicide bomb attacks occurred Sunday night at 3 different locations within Kofa community, 8 kilometers away from Maiduguri. According to eyewitness accounts, the first suicide bomber detonated her IED near a mosque when worshippers were performing prayers at 8:30 in the evening, killing herself and 7 persons. The second suicide bomber found her way into a residential building and killed a family of 5, including herself and another suicide bomber. Few minutes later, 2 other suicide bombers also detonated their IEDs within the same vicinity, killing themselves alone. Confirming the attacks, the police in Maiduguri say 11 persons that sustained injuries have been taken to hospital for medical attention, stressing that the command is on top of the situation.
17 persons, including the 5 female suicide bombers, died in the explosions, the multiple explosions, while 11 civilians sustained various degrees of injuries and were promptly rushed to University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital. The area for now is calm because immediately this incident occurred, the command mobilized our EOD team to stabilize and render the area safe.
Normalcy has been restored to the area, and the police warned residents to remain alert always. In Maiduguri, Maimuna Garba, NTA.
Well, from that story of the terrorist attack in Borno takes us to our main focus for discussion today, which is refugee, the plight of the displaced person as a result of such attacks. And I have with me in the studio to discuss more the Chief Executive Officer of African Refugees Foundation, RF, Mr. Olujimi Olushola. You're welcome to Panorama.
Thank you very much.
Today is World Refugee Day. What is the theme for this year's day?
This year's theme centers around we as individuals and corporate organizations standing by refugees. We stand by IDPs. Now, that's the theme. The incidence of IDPs globally has quadrupled, right, in the last 5 years, right? And so the phenomenon of refugees and IDPs have come together in such a way that you cannot separate them. What's the basic difference? A refugee crosses a border of a country to another country, and that makes you a refugee. But an IDP simply crosses a line within a state, and you become displaced, you become homeless. So this year's theme is we stand by IDPs. And of course, you know that every year the theme for the World Refugee Day changes, and it all revolves around how we can become our brother's keepers.
Now, looking at the various challenges facing the refugees, and how relevant is this theme to tackle those challenges?
I mean, if you just for a moment think about the number of people, Nigerians, who are displaced in the Northeast, and I'm talking well over 3 million in the Northeast alone, you will know that the theme is not just relevant for this year, it's relevant for a lifetime. Right? So if we get people who are ill, who are impoverished, who do not have any shelter, who have no access to medical care or even love, that theme certainly supersedes everything else. Now, and that incidence of IDPs grows daily. Don't forget also that because we have a concentration of people in camps outside the formal area, doesn't mean you don't have IDPs everywhere. IDPs are scattered all over the nation, right? Those who are destitute, those who have no place to stay, those who have nobody to care for them. We simply just look at them as if they're souls of another generation. No, they too have their own souls. They are IDPs. We consider them people who are also unfortunate. So that theme, it's all encompassing.
Now, let's still stay on the theme for now and look at the role of the agencies, humanitarian agencies, your own organization and different organizations also, in integrating this set of people back into the society.
Now, the role of specialized agencies like the African Refugees Foundation and hundreds of others, is quite critical. But it's also a numbers game. If we have agencies that can break down the incidence of ensuring that refugees and IDPs become more productive in society, then you can now start looking at people who will take care of health, people who will take care of education, people who will take care of skills training, people who will take care of feeding, people who will take care of clothing, people who will take care of shelter. And it goes on and on. So not just organizations like the African Refugees Foundation, but organizations that also have specialized interests in ensuring humanity can remain. It's quite important. What we have done and what we had advocated since inception in 1993 was to ensure that governments, both state and local, as well as African governments, develop a model where you have management organizations like we have in Nigeria, the National Emergency Management Agency. We also have the National Commission for Refugees and Internally Displaced Persons. Yeah. We have the lead agency, the lead international agency in this country, which is the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. We had encouraged, alongside with the OAU then, when the founders of RF started this, to ensure that it was not going to be something that was going to be done by one person. And because of the expensive nature of relief, of care, of rehabilitation, governments have to be involved much more than they are. And that's governments across all levels.
Now, now you have mentioned governments. Now, let's look at the issues, especially here, back home in Nigeria, especially at the IDP camps. Do you think government is actually doing enough to address the issues there?
Well, government has spent quite a lot of money in trying to alleviate the tensions and the sufferings that are occurring in those camps. But new challenges come up daily. And if you do not spend money or resources in the right direction, you are likely not to see anything tangible that will come out of it now. But also let me tell you that the terrain is rough there in the Northeast. It's volunteers. It's a volunteer's nightmare, because you want to take people out from other places, from your comfort zone, to help refugees or people who are who are displaced. What guarantees of security? What guarantees of basic living conditions would you give those volunteers? So, government is trying, But government can do a lot more better by synergizing all, and not just, the churches, the entire structure of the Nigerian social organizations to, get the synergized properly, so that, if you had 1 or 2 organizations looking after 300 or 400 people, then don't forget we have well over 2.3 million IDPs scattered all over. The state governments of the Northeast are also trying as much as possible to resettle these refugees, to build infrastructure, but it's not a game changer.
Okay.
The game changer is when people like you and I can still offer to say, please come from the north, come to the south. Those who are fanning the embers of war really do not understand the effects of that. And so when the game changer will be when you can be your brother's keeper, and you can ask anybody, I have a room at home, come from the north and come and stay here. That alone will be a massive game changer, because if we're 150 million people in Nigeria and 10 million are displaced, are you telling me that we cannot find room for the 10 million in our homes? Naturally, we should. So even if the government is making that effort in spending resources, we, the Nigerian people, should also make that effort in assimilating people who are displaced, who need care, who need help, within our own comfort zones.
But organizations like yours, what exactly are you doing to educate Nigerians on how they can be of assistance to the displaced persons?
Unfortunately, a lot of organizations have challenges, financial challenges, resourceful challenges, in order to continue to expand their views and help out in organization with the kind of things that we do. Now, the foundation had actually changed focus from rescue in the early days to much more of facilitating development now. Well, at RF, we started off at anticipating disasters, rehabilitating victims, right, and educating them and facilitating development. Now, organizations are hamstrung because you need resources. You need to plan for an endowment. It is that endowment that will help get other people to be educated, get other people to be trained to go out. So what we do, right, one of the core functions of the African Refugees Foundation is to continually advocate via the cheapest means possible within our remit, which is the electronic media, which is by having the seminars and conferences that we hold, to people, generality of people, that there are various structures of refugee management, one of which is trying to change the psyche of our leaders, because refugees and IDPs challenges are caused by the people who lead local governments, who lead countries, who lead continents, right? And if they have the right frame of thinking about how to ensure there's even development, then of course, we would continue to excel.
Last question, let me ask you this question. You haven't seen the plight, the challenges, the sufferings of these displaced people. What advice would you have for those who are fanning the embers of war in this country? What advice would you have for them?
That those embers of war, you better douse, put water on them. War is not a situation anybody wants to be involved in. Just take a look around the world. See what's happened in Libya, see what happened in Lebanon, see how long it's taken to rebuild even in the Middle East, and all of that. So Nigeria remains indivisible, stronger together. And I would say that, please, the issues that people talk about war should be definitely left on the back burner, right? It's not anything to contemplate at all in this country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olushola, for coming on Panorama.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we move on to other stories. The Nigerian Railway Corporation has refuted allegations that the washout that occurred in Mokwa rail line was as a result of the corporation's inactiveness. Managing Director, Nigerian Railway Corporation, Fidet Okiria, stated this during a media briefing in Lagos on measures put in place by the corporation to restore railway services in the affected areas. Annie Daniels has the details.
Managing Director, Nigerian Railway Corporation, Fidet Ohiria, disclosed that the corporation has always been proactive in discharge of its duties aimed at averting disasters on services and rail lines. One of the measures he reveals is the deployment of personnel to rail lines across the country, especially during wet seasons between May and September, in order to inspect, detect and repair disaster-prone spots.
This one just came too forceful and powerful for. It's not the one that gives you signs.
Ohiria regretted that the washout has disrupted rail services between the western and northern parts of the country. However, with directives from the Minister of Transportation, Right Honorable Rotimi Chibika Amechi, urgent measures have been put in place to ensure speedy restoration of rail services in the affected areas. These include the transportation of repair materials to the affected sites.
In Lagos, we are moving some granite, that's what we call ballast, and we are moving Gideon crates and lumpstones to support what we are moving from Ibadan Ofa, and we are also taking from Zaria.
The temporary measure, he says, is expected to last for 2 weeks and will go up about 5 million naira.
Those who have loads that are going up north have to wait for these 2 weeks for us to clear the track before we can move them.
It will be recalled that a rail washout occurred a few days ago between Ndafu and Tatabu villages in the Niger State following a flood. In Lagos, Annie Daniels, NTA News.
A 3-day workshop on a new national maritime transport policy for Nigeria has commenced in Lagos. This is under the auspices of the International Maritime Organization in collaboration with the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA. Tunde Saiki has the details.
The evolution of the Nigerian maritime business dates back to the pre-colonial era. Despite her enormous endowment with over 857 kilometers coast and over 3,000 inland waterways with 6 active port complexes and over 100 terminals, coupled with 4,000 ocean-going vessels, the country has no national maritime transport policy to show for it. This left a policy gap in the maritime subsector. It's against this background that stakeholders decide to meet to work out a desirable policy for the country.
All of these players are interlinked and interwoven. Their roles are interlinked and interwoven. And so we must have a harmonized position. Therefore, we identified that there is a gap. And we sought help from the International Maritime Organization, which got us professionals.
The Secretary General, International Maritime Organization, IMO, Kitak Lim, represented by Head African Section, IMO, William Azu, says Nigeria, with its rich maritime endowment and international standard maritime policy, will go a long way to boost the sub-regional maritime operations.
We're trying to assist the country to fill that gap. In the new ways of doing things with the sustainable development goals, we are assisting the administration to pick aspects of these strategies that they can use to build into.
Also, as part of efforts at regional collaboration, the Director General, NIMASA, also played host to the Director General of Ghana Maritime Authority, Kwame Owusu, where vital issues on how to develop the West African maritime industry were discussed. In Lagos, Tunde Saiki, NTA News.
Chief of Defense Mohammed Danali has affirmed the federal government's commitment to the welfare of retired military personnel. He stated this in a message during the passing out ceremony of trainees at the Armed Forces Resettlement Center, Oshodi, Lagos. Rotimi Oluwagbemi compiled this report.
The Minister of Defense, who was represented by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Ambassador Danjuma Sheni, enjoined the graduates to make judicious use of the knowledge acquired during the training to better their lives. He urged them not to relent in contributing their quota towards nation building.
As ambassadors of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, and indeed the nation at large, you are also obliged to reflect the core values of loyalty, integrity, and unalloyed service, particularly in the area of national security.
The Commandant, Nigerian Armed Forces Resettlement Center, Air Vice Marshal Augustine Chekono, commended the graduates for a successful training course. He advised them to be law-abiding citizens during retirement.
Our mission at NAFRIC is to give quality training to personnel of the armed forces who are about retiring from active service. So we play a very crucial role in preparing military personnel for life after service.
Certificates were presented to outstanding candidates. Some of the graduates comment.
As a registered surveyor, I will practice to be useful to the society.
I want to go to farming, which I know that is the most essential thing one can do today.
The 6-month training course was attended by 295 candidates. This include 270 from Army, 18 from Navy, and 7 from the Air Force.
Well, that's how far we can go today on Panorama, which came to you from Lagos Network Center. Thanks for watching.